So writing a personal statement is by no means an easy task, and as a prospective medical student, you're gonna have to write one, I'm afraid. Now, I'm in my 4th year of med school, which means I wrote my personal statement 5 years ago, and I did it in 5 steps. Now, today in this video, I want to talk a little bit more about the 5 steps I used, how to structure planning that personal statement out. Now, if that sounds like a good idea to you, let's get straight into the video. Right, so I'm a 4th year medical student, and I just want to say this straight away, by no means was my personal statement a work of art, but I think it did the job in terms of getting me into med school, getting me all the interviews that I needed, and essentially fulfilling everything that I needed it to do. So let's talk briefly about the beginning. So the first thing that you always do is research. Now when I say research I mean research what you actually are required to do. So you should essentially understand that you need to deliver a 4,000 word or 47 lines, whichever comes first, of text about yourself, almost like an advert to the interviewers. It's the first time they'll have come across you at all in that medical admissions process or cycle. And so it's the first time that you need to boast about yourself. Tell them everything that they need to know in one A4 piece of paper. Contrary to popular belief, it's not about catching them off by surprise. It's not about being the unique candidate amongst a pile of papers that they've got. Being unique doesn't work, you know? You can be unique and be really good, but you can also be unique and be horribly horrendous. So don't try and be the one guy who does it differently or does a weird person's statement, because that's not how it works. All they really are asking you to do is just tell them about yourself. So be yourself, and if it's similar to other personal statements, it doesn't matter. You know, at the end of the day, you're all applying for the same spot in med school, so there is going to be some resemblance between every person's statement. But when you research, you should also research the universities you're applying for. Now, hopefully you have a rough idea of what you want to apply to, which universities. You want to research what the universities that you're applying to want. So have a look. If you're applying to UCL, what are the specific things about UCL that make it kind of a different university to Imperial or King's? And maybe tailor your personal statement towards that. That is really what being unique means. Make sure you do a lot of research before you start in the universities that you're doing, what the personal statement needs to be, and also researching, you know, what kind of things you can write about. So let's talk about the next thing, your activity dump. Now, the activity dump is kind of a variation of the brain dump, which is a notorious revision strategy, and that is where you essentially get a blank piece of A4 paper and jot down everything you know about a topic. Let's say organic chemistry, which is very vague, but you jot down every single thing you know about organic chemistry, and you do that for 10 minutes. Once you've distilled everything that you know about organic chemistry onto that piece of paper, you then open up a textbook and check whether you've got everything down. Now that's the brain dump. The activity dump is something that I created, and it's essentially a tool that I use. So I would sit down with a blank A4 piece of paper and go through the last 3 years of volunteering, work experience, activities that I've done, and dump every single thing that I could think of onto this piece of paper. I wouldn't organize it, categorize it, strategize it, or anything. Just dump everything down onto a piece of paper, and that piece of paper will become one of the most important pieces of paper I would have for the whole personal statement process. Now this piece of paper, what I would do with it is after half an hour, even if I'd forgotten something a day later, I'd come back to the piece of paper and add it down. And what this does is it gives me essentially a breakdown of every single thing that I've done, so that I'm 100% sure I've not forgotten anything before I start writing my statement. Now once you begin writing it, you can then categorize these, organize these, select ones that you want to talk about in your personal statement, because believe it or not, you're not going to be able to fit everything onto that statement, and that's fine. You're going to want to keep some of these activities for your interview, because if you've got nothing new to bring to the MMI, it's going to look a little bit drab. So don't pick everything. Pick 2 or 3 of the ones that you can write about the best, that you reflected on the best, that you learned the best from, and write about those in your personal statement. Maybe 2 or 3, that's enough. And then save the remainders for your interview so that you can bring stuff out of your pocket that you haven't talked about in your personal statement. So that's a really good thing to do. So I recommend doing the activity dump after you've done the research. Right, so you've done all this, what to do now? So the next thing is you want to do your structure. So let's not even think about writing yet. Let's talk about the structure. So 47 lines, 4,000 characters is not a lot of space to write. So you need to have a very good structure. Now, what I chose to do was 4 paragraphs. Number 1 was my introduction. Number 2 was my work experience / science. Number 3 was my volunteering. And number 4 was my conclusion. Let's talk about that. So introduction should be very brief. Think about your section 3 BMAT introduction. It's essentially just a very quick few lines about yourself, who you are and why you're applying to med school. Now, this can include an anecdote if you'd like, this can include a quote, it can include a book that you've read about, whatever you want, but it's just really telling the examiner who you are and why you are applying to medical school. So think about it, try and distill a reason about why you're applying to med school, really dig deep and just essentially provide that in maybe 2-3 lines. That's all you need to do, because it's not much information that you're actually giving them. So don't waste any of your lines or character. Now, your next paragraph is the first paragraph that is really important. So it's your science or work experience paragraph. Now, the reason I put 2 things in this is because it depends on whether you're applying to Oxbridge or not. If you're applying to Oxbridge, they do like you to talk about science, so a scientific article, maybe some research that you did, or a piece of biology that interests you. For some reason, they like that, and I don't really know why, but they just want you to write about it. So I wrote about some work experience I did that tied into malaria, and that tied into a project that I did. So that was because I applied to Cambridge, so I had to write about that. But if you don't apply to Oxbridge, you can use this paragraph to talk about your work experience maybe. Go into detail about what you saw, maybe go into detail about what it taught you, and definitely reflect on that piece of experience. The worst thing you can do in your personal statement is write a bunch of things and not reflect on them. Every single thing that you write about must be leading to some sort of reflection. So that's so important to do that. Whether you're writing about science, work experience, research, whatever you want to do, reflect on it. So that's your paragraph 2. Now, paragraph 3, in my opinion, is the most important one. It's your volunteering paragraph. And for me, this was the biggest paragraph. It took the most amount of time to cut down, to edit, talk about 2 or 3 volunteering opportunities that you did, and really go to town on the reflection. Reflect everything that you did in the volunteering, talk about what you learned about it, how it's going to apply to med school, how your career is going to be affected by this, how your life as a physician could be affected by this volunteering, and really go into detail about it. And that's the biggest bulk of your personal statement, that 3rd paragraph. And then your final one, your conclusion, is really just a way to finish it off, a nice quick summary, something that really ties together the whole piece. Again, a couple of lines. Really think about how you concluded your BMAT Section 3 essay. Again, really nice, concise, a quick summary, that's all. So that's the structure. Now, finally, we're going to get to writing the essay. So the writing bit, now you've done all this hard work, should actually be a piece of cake. You don't need to start with the introduction, like most people do. You can start wherever you want in the personal statement, but just get down to writing, because lo and behold, you're going to edit this thing about 15 different times before you've actually submitted it to the university. So don't believe what you're writing down is what you're going to send off. It's going to have so many things edited and re-edited and edited again and inserted and taken out and, rejigged and reordered that you won't recognize it by the time you send it in. So just write down what you think for the first time, because now comes the process of editing it. And in this process, you need to show it to your careers advisor, your teachers, maybe even your friends, your parents, friends who've gone to medical school, anyone. Show it to them and get their feedback. You don't have to take everyone's feedback, no one's saying that this is what you have to do, but it's really valuable to get as many different angles as possible. And then you need to take all that feedback, use your own critical thinking, and decide what you want to take on board and what you don't. So it's really up to you. You should really be showing this to about 5 different people minimum, but you can choose who you want to take on board in terms of advice. And that's really all I want to say. That's essentially the structure. Those are the 5 things that I did. So we started off with research, the activity dump, the structure, the write, and then the edit. And then after this long process, you finally send it off. That is a personal statement done. Now, you should keep a copy of this statement because you might want to look at it before your interview, and we'll talk about this more in the interview video that I'll do. But it's really important to look over it again before your MMI. Let's stop. I think you've heard me talk a lot today, and I think it's been a little bit useful, hopefully, in terms of composing a personal statement. Hopefully you've got a lot out of that video. If you've got any questions, like I said, comment sections down below, and you can contact me on Instagram. And yeah, thank you for listening. Hopefully it's been useful, and I'll see you all in the next video.